Hello, everyone, and welcome back to week 2 of the Mindful Healthcare Speaker Series, Resources for Challenging Times, brought to you by the Awake Network and mindful.org. So far, we've had over 16,000 people from around the globe, around 60 different countries, sign up to this speaker series, and welcome to all of you. My name is Dr. Rina Katecha. I'm a physician by background and founder of Mindful Medics, the Healthcare Starts with Self-Care program, which really looks to empower healthcare professionals to prioritize their own health and well-being, such that in turn they're better empowered and able to look after the population at large. I'm so delighted to be your host today. Now, in this speaker series, we are hearing from eminent mindfulness and healthcare teachers, leaders, and experts. And really, they're sharing with us their deep inner wisdom, insights, and practices to help us better navigate these challenging times. Today, it's an absolute honor to have with us Dr. Zev Schuman-Olivier, faculty in the Department of Psychiatry at the Harvard Medical School. Zev holds many leadership and faculty positions. And for today, I really want to highlight that Zev is a seasoned mindfulness practitioner, teacher, and visionary leader that is really leading the way in integrating mindfulness and compassion into healthcare. So Zev is Executive Director at the Cambridge Health Alliance Center for Mindfulness and Compassion. And it's a true honor to have him with us today. Zev, welcome.
Thank you for inviting me. This is a really impactful program that you all are offering. I'm glad I can be a part of it.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you and really looking forward to sort of explore with you and unpick how mindfulness can help us navigate these turbulent times. So as you will know, healthcare professionals across the board are going above and beyond their call of duty at this time. Many are experiencing a whole range of challenges in how they provide care and how they look after themselves as they're providing that care. So they're navigating a whole range of challenging experiences. And a lot of how healthcare is now being delivered, a lot of healthcare practices and services have had to be adapted during this time. So, you know, we've got staff who are donning PPE, right? And it's uncomfortable, it's claustrophobic, and it quite literally puts a physical barrier between themselves and their patients and colleagues. We have other staff who've been redeployed to practice in areas and specialties that they're uncomfortable in. Right. And then I'm also hearing from healthcare professionals who are having to shift from in-person patient contact to telemedicine, to digital online consultations. And this poses its own limitations, right? Especially when it comes to perhaps, those hands-on examinations, the clinical examinations. And then there are healthcare professionals across the board who are struggling with their caseloads of patients who elective surgeries have been cancelled and elective treatments and interventions have been cancelled. And so there's just so much going on and so much to contend with here. The pressure has been and is immense. And so really, I'd love to get your wider perspective on how we can use mindfulness as a core skill to navigate these turbulent times and really get an idea of how you're doing, both personally and professionally, and what practices, tools, and techniques are you finding helpful and useful. And of course, I know you're part of a much larger voice here in terms of your team and your colleagues at the Center for Mindfulness and Compassion. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, Zev.
I think you just laid out a lot of what I've been experiencing and seeing, both in our community and our hospital system and personally. I would just start by mentioning that in addition to my role as director for the Center for Mindfulness and Compassion, I'm also an addiction psychiatrist and have been doing that clinical work during this time. And that informs a lot of my experience. I think it's important to start with what is mindfulness. And for me, the way I understand mindfulness is about mindfully being with whatever's arising. from moment to moment. For warmly being with whatever's arising from moment to moment. And so thinking about how that applies here, when I notice some of what you described, and when I've been being with myself, and what I see others being with is this uncertainty, massive change in unprecedented ways, complete reorganization of our healthcare system. Here at Cambridge Health Alliance, which is one of the Harvard Medical School teaching hospitals, we've been within days shifting entire units to have different purposes, having staff taking on very different roles, staff who are healthy being stepping up courageously to go in person when we didn't have all the PPE that would be ideal to be able to start taking care of patients, and other staff that have physical challenges in one way or another, having to have the courage to be able to speak up to take care of themselves, maybe bringing forth things that they never told their colleagues they were carrying, their diabetes, their immune, the autoimmune disease, and having the courage to kind of bring that out and ask for help, which has been so important during this time, but hard. I see my colleagues and myself as a parent having to both work from home, parent, and provide telecare, as you say, which is a uniquely difficult challenge to be able to live up to our aspirations as parents, while also trying to be good healthcare professionals. But it's also important to say that it's not just what's happening in healthcare. What we're seeing is massive change across society and across the way that our nation and other nations are interfacing, and the kind of discourse that's happening. There's incredible division that feels like it's arising that is very unsettling and leads to and contributes to the uncertainty. And then just watching various different health disparities and disparities in the way people are experiencing COVID-19 arising, and the gender disparities in the way that with children at home, the way that families are trying to cope with work and family life should not be underestimated. Some of the people that I've seen having the most difficulty in our system are the ones who have young children at home and are trying to manage that and have partners that are also working. And the stress of that is really intense. So what I notice is that everyone is really being pushed in healthcare, and I myself am as well. Feel like I've been working harder than ever, both as an administrator in the healthcare system and for the center. Actually, I had a feeling you might ask me a question like that, and I asked my daughter, who's 13, who I was running with yesterday, if she had any wisdom about what's been going on with COVID-19, and and just very quickly she said, "Dad, I can't talk, I'm running." And it was interesting because that really kind of sparked something in me to realize that even just in my thinking about how to talk about, you said, the deep wisdom I'm going to share from my experience, it is hard to come out with the deep wisdom right now because I feel like I've been running for 2 months. And I imagine that many of us here are in roles where we normally are providing wisdom, or we're the one that's caring for others, and yet we find ourselves in this kind of running role. And it reminds me when I first started teaching mindfulness, I was leading a group for a clinical trial we were doing with smoking cessation. And this was back when she was 3, and she had childcare that would end 30 minutes after my group. And I used to run down the Mass General, Cambridge Street, trying to run to get to the train. If I missed the train, then I'd be late for childcare. So it was always this intense rush. And I remember that I got into this practice of, as I was running full sprint down the street, just thinking, this is rushing, this is rushing, this is rushing. And so I was able to get on the train. Usually I made it. I was able to come down and still be present, because I've been present the whole time. And so when I reflect on that and think about what's going on now, I just notice how much I feel personally like I'm being pushed into new roles, pushed to take on, in my case, helping to prepare our system and our region for the mental health surge that's anticipated to come now that the medical surge is starting to fade, and thinking about how we're going to deal with that. And so I'm feeling pushed. I notice in all my colleagues that they've been feeling pushed and pushed. We lost all our vacation and CME time for the last 4 or 5 months because we all needed to be available consistently, that and and so I think mindfulness can help us as healthcare providers by just recognizing that we're being pushed, we're pushing, and we're pushing ourselves to live up to the expectation that society has for us right now, to be able to be the ones um, that can be here, because so many other structures are feeling divided or are unstable, and so we're pushing ourselves. And I think if we can just notice and say to ourselves, this is pushing, this is
Mm.
pushing, this is pushing, then when we have moments in between where we don't have to be pushing, we have that enough distance and enough presence to be able to then breathe and be centered. And then when we enter back into the pushing, we have to go back to the unit, and don the PPE. We can just notice this is pushing. I'm pushing myself. Um, we had several younger staff members on our team who ended up volunteering to go to the inpatient COVID psychiatric unit, so that the others didn't have to. And that it was scary for them, coming from being outpatient providers and suddenly being thrust inpatient, or our residents that were suddenly thrust into ICU settings, who hadn't necessarily been prepared for that. It really was pushing, but I think mindfulness can help us to know when we're doing that, that's what we're doing, and why we're doing it, and to be able to help us to be able to stop when when we don't have to.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Zev, I just want to call out how grateful I am that you've shared your vulnerability here. So yes, it's very easy to sort of put on the doctor hat and sort of go into that caregiver role, but sometimes we need to notice that we're struggling, or notice that this is hard, and actually put our hands up and say, you know what, I feel like I'm running, I'm in overdrive, I'm pushing, and so I would struggle to find the wisdom at this time. I know it's there, but I'm struggling to find that wisdom perhaps at this time. And the best that I can do is just name what I'm experiencing in the moment as I try and do the best I can do. And you've so beautifully sort of shared that with us. And I just wanted to name that, and really thank you for doing that, because traditionally within healthcare, we're not really good at doing that. We often sort of take on the vulnerability and the difficulties of our patients, and where the caregiver role, right, where the caregiver identity, where we try and problem solve and fix everything. And traditionally, I think that has lent itself to having higher rates of mental health problems and burnout and fatigue in the healthcare profession.
So for those who might be on this call, you likely have a practice of mindfulness, or you've had some interest in that, and maybe even those around you see you as somebody who's, a mindful or a well-balanced person in some way. And it's important to know that can lead to its own pressures as well, that somehow we feel like then during this time, I've been practicing mindfulness for all these years, I shouldn't be unsettled or noticing feelings of overwhelm. And then we can start to judge ourselves. Maybe we're not good enough practitioners, or maybe if I just practice that extra hour a day, then I wouldn't be feeling this unsettled feeling with all this uncertainty. But it's really normal, I think, to feel feel pushed right now in our roles and our responsibilities that we have as healthcare providers. It's normal to notice the way how unsettling this uncertainty can be. One of the things to know about our brain and the way brains work is that they are essentially prediction machines. They're constantly predicting the future to see if to help us prepare for what's coming in the next moment. And so when there's this level of uncertainty and changing from day to day, it really does a number on the mind, which is why it can be so helpful to stay in the moment and just be with what is here, and to get out of that evolutionary tendency to just predict. But that is the nature of the mind.
It is for sure. And Zev, that quite nicely brings me on to a topic I really wanted to explore with you, the topic of experiential avoidance. Now, I know you've done a lot of work around this topic, you teach around this topic, you've done research into this topic. And for me, the way that I understand it is experiential avoidance is when in the moment, the experience, the situation can be so painful or sad or upsetting or challenging that we do what we can to protect ourselves, right? And sometimes the protection, the habitual pattern to protect ourselves is to perhaps go into autopilot mode, react in some way, or engage in addictive patterns of behavior. And what is ironic, and I've certainly felt this in my personal life, is that most often than not, when I do try and experientially avoid, and for me, it's not sort of reaching for addictive, sort of hardcore addictive drugs or alcohol or anything like that. For me, it's food. It's emotional eating, right? It just helps me to numb down the intensity of what I'm feeling. And so what I've noticed is when I engage in that avoidance behavior, inadvertently, I end up feeling not great eventually. And I end up exacerbating my own difficulty or struggle or pain. And so I'd love you to talk about that and how we can use mindfulness and compassion to sort of sit with the intensity of the experience. We're all going through a whole range of human emotion at the moment, everything from fear and anxiety and grief and guilt, moral distress, anticipatory stress. How can we use these practices to sit with the experience, even though it's difficult and challenging, and our instinctive reaction is to sort of try and either shut it out, run away from it, or engage in something else to avoid it? And in your experience, how do you see this helping, particularly given what we're going through currently?
I think the first thing to just notice about what you said was this instinctive experience. So it's important to acknowledge and accept that this tendency to avoid, just like the tendency to avoid unpleasant things, just like this tendency to approach or want more of pleasant things, is very instinctive. It's evolutionarily built in, and you see it, going back to early eukaryotic development in, the development of species, where things move towards things that are positive for them, and things move away from things that are not. So being able to we shouldn't expect, by the way, that just because we've been practicing for 6 months or a year, that suddenly that tendency is going to be gone. So we need to be kind to ourselves and acknowledge that this is a pretty built-in system in our brain. Experiential avoidance, I think about it as, I have this image from presentations I give that I think sums it up nicely, of an ostrich with their head in the sand. And different feelings or thoughts kind of all being around. And sometimes when that's happening, there is some part of us that just wants to put our head into the sand and kind of pretend that it's not there, not acknowledge what's here. I learned the term experiential avoidance actually from acceptance and commitment therapy from Stephen Hayes' work. But I think that it really aligns with the work that we're doing in mindfulness, because so much of what mindfulness is helping us do is helping us to be able to be with what's arising without needing to run from it, or without needing to cling to it and own it and personalize it. And so if we can do that, then what happens is we're able to self-regulate better, because we're exposing ourselves to what the challenging stimuli is. And by not acting, we are we're allowing the memory of this system to actually reconsolidate and let whatever the reactive patterns that we have extinguish. It's called extinction. So this process is one of the ways that we mindfulness really helps us to self-regulate, to have better attentional control and cognitive control, to be able to stabilize what we're paying attention to and how we're focusing our awareness. It helps with emotion regulation, to being able to shift the way we're appraising situations, so we're not always immediately going to a negativity bias, or we're choosing the negative option, or getting caught in rumination and self-critical rumination. And part of the way mindfulness practice as it develops helps us to self-regulate as well is by this quality of decentering, or being able to step out of the experience and to have this metacognitive awareness, being able to have a little distance from what's arising in our present moment experience. So all those together work synergistically to help us self-regulate, to help us find balance after we've lost balance, and to help us be able to tolerate what's arising for us when there's unpleasant experience. One of the things that's been really interesting in some recent neuroscience that's emerged has been that when we initially are exposed to a fear, a fear experience or a deeply unpleasant experience, we often will actually have a sort of overwhelm or a freeze reaction. You may have heard this kind of fight or flight or freeze. And freeze is what happens when we kind of don't know what to do. And so when we see this kind of activation getting into the central amygdala and the fear circuitry, people freeze. One of the things that's interesting is that it actually goes through, it seems, the basolateral amygdala. And when people actually experience a successful avoidance action, then the signal doesn't get transmitted into the central amygdala where the freezes. Instead, it just stays in the basolateral amygdala, but you see activation of nucleus accumbens. And so what often activation of nucleus accumbens means, it's about learning, it's about prediction error, or this idea that it's often what's linked to rewarding behaviors, or behaviors that become repetitive and with addiction. And so there's this almost like rewarding success signal that happens when we successfully avoid an action, and that will lead to learning that this is a way to avoid that action again. And what happens is the more and more that we end up going down that pathway, we've successfully avoided that freezing feeling that was so unpleasant, that overwhelm. But we've also now brought on this new process of a repetitive habitual pattern that's self-rewarding. And we need to get back to that initial moment and learn how to be able to be with that overwhelm without freezing in a way that leads to other sorts of traumas, but to be able to be with what we're experiencing. It's important to say that I see within mindfulness now two kind of general pathways of mindfulness, and I've been calling it the cool pathway and the warm pathway. And I think that it was actually really essential to start with the cool pathway of teaching mindfulness within at least the Western world over the last 20, 30 years, because it's about having a really discriminative mind, having really clear seeing, like a scientist, being able to evaluate each moment-to-moment experience without judgment. But historically, and within many teachers' practices, perhaps in their hidden curriculum, not in what they've been writing, what we've actually been seeing is a curriculum of heartfulness and kindness and warmth and open-heartedness. And we need to not just have a very sharp and discriminative mind, but we need to have an open heart in order to be able to allow these practices to deepen, and in order to be able to navigate those moments of overwhelm. Because sometimes just having a really sharp and clear attentional focus doesn't get us to where, doesn't get us or help us be with what is arising. This is why I use that word, warmly being with, because I feel like when we bring in this warmth of the warm mindfulness pathway, what we start to see is other natural processes in the brain as well, our attachment system, our internal affiliative soothing system, that are, and the natural rewarding function of compassion itself, that's able to help us to be able to, without trying to do anything or trying to escape a situation, bring compassion and warmth for ourselves and for the fact that we are being suffering, experiencing in this moment, this experience. And that often can just give us more capacity to be able to hold what's there. Our research at the Center for Mindfulness and Compassion over the last 5 years has been through this NIH Science of Behavior Change Initiative. We've been implementing mindfulness across our healthcare system at the level of primary care. I think we've had more than 3,000 referrals in 3 years, and have been able to, with more than 160 referrers throughout our primary care healthcare system, and being able to deliver an 8-week mindfulness-based intervention that engages both, that really engages this warm pathway of training in mindfulness. What we have seen is that people have actually been able to initiate behavior change around their health, chronic illness self-management or health maintenance, between 2 and 4 times as much odds within 8 weeks when they have gone through our program, really bringing in and integrating this warm pathway for mindfulness. But I can talk more about what we're teaching if you're interested.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it sounds like through the Mindfulness in Primary Care program, where you're really able to sort of access people who traditionally might not have access to mindfulness, and really take them through 8 weeks of deep integrative learning and an experiential process. And that's what I wanted to come on to. So much of what you've talked about, I'm aware that you've very skillfully sort of integrated into a beautiful stop, ache and go practice. And so what I'd love to hear more about is, and if you could share with the audience what that practice is, when perhaps it might be useful to use this practice in the moment. And also, I'd love for you to guide us through a practice, if you may, Zev.
Okay. I'd be happy to. Thanks for the invitation. So the stop, ache, and go practice is an informal practice, is the informal practice for our 8-week mindfulness-based intervention, the Mindfulness Training for Primary Care program. And we build each week on another skill or another capacity that's being cultivated during the 8 weeks. And so it's building. So by the end, they're able to put together all the different pieces that I think are really important for not just an 8-week program of mindfulness, but for a lifetime of being able to work with and deepening one's mindfulness practice. It's important to say that our program is trauma informed, and we developed it that way back 5 years ago, really recognizing that as we were working in primary care, that so many people were coming to us I should say 50% of our population is on federally subsidized health insurance, which was one of the goals that we had, to be able to make it accessible. And we were able to meet at least the cultural and ethnic goals that we had as far as making it accessible, related to our community and our health system. No intervention is perfect and perfectly accessible, but we'd like it to be, and continuing to evolve in that way to make it that way. But the trauma-informed piece is important because when we're asking people to bear with experience, first of all, we're not asking people to approve of what they're experiencing. They may need to accept or acknowledge that what's here is here, but they don't need to approve of it, and that's one very important thing. The other pieces that are very important from a trauma-informed perspective is that there's always choice, and that the goal is over time for them to develop their own wisdom about how to navigate through a practice. So I'm happy to lead the stop, ache, and go practice. And I'll just say before I get started that it is about stopping, allowing the ache, whatever it is, whatever that is, the suffering to be there, and then from there going out and going in a different direction. And so that's what this practice is trying to help people to do.
Perfect.
So, well, Rena, if you're ready, and everybody else, I invite you to find a quiet place if you have one, to be able to sit in a comfortable posture, or lie down, or whatever posture you feel like is going to allow you to be able to bring your awareness inside for the next 10 minutes. And if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes, and if not, you can just keep kind of looking at me here on the screen. So there's been a lot that's come up for many of us over the last few weeks around COVID-19. And I'd like to just invite you to bring something to mind, whether it's a emotion or an experience or something that was said, something that was seen in the last week. But before you do, I want to ask you not to bring a 10 out of 10 thing to mind as far as its intensity, but maybe something in the range of 4 to 5 out of 10, something that you feel like you might be able to work with that will not overwhelm you. And if you've already had something come to mind that's a 10 out of 10, then I will make sure that there are ways in this practice that you can work with that as well. But I just encourage people to just spend a moment, maybe the next 10 seconds, just allowing yourself to bring back to mind some difficult situation or some challenge from this week that maybe is about a 4 to 5 out of 10 intensity. I just want to invite you to stop. If it's hard to stop what's going on in the mind, I invite you to just try to slow it down. Just slow it down a bit. I invite you to set an intention to turn towards present moment experience. And that might be hard for people. If something's arising, that's hard to turn towards. And if that's the case, just take notice of the breathing. Just take notice of 1 to 2 breaths. Just noticing when the breath is coming in and noticing when it's going out. Noticing when it's coming in, that it's coming in, and noticing that when it's going out, it's going out. As we turn towards experience, just trying to observe with openness what's in the mind right now. What's the mind aware of now? We talk about a diamond of experience. At the top of the diamond is what thoughts are arising in the mind. And working our way around that diamond, what body sensations are arising right now in present moment experience? What emotions are present right now? What urges are here right now? Maybe it's an urge to push something away, or an urge to pull something closer, to own it. And then moving to that center of the diamond. And just noticing, what's the feeling tone of this experience? What's the valence? Is it pleasant? Is it unpleasant? Is it neutral? Whatever is arising right now in present moment experience, just warmly being with what's arising, allowing it to be there. One doesn't need to approve of what's happened or approve of the way one handled it, but just allowing the reality that it's here now. Just allowing that to be there, acknowledging that it's here. And that may be hard, and if that's hard, it's okay. Just anchoring in the breathing again. Bringing awareness and attention to the breath, noticing the breath as it's coming in, and all the sensations associated with the breath as it's coming in through the nostrils, down the back of the throat, filling the lungs and down into the belly, and then following the full body of the breath as it moves back out again. At any point, we can anchor back in the breath by noticing the breathing as it comes in and as it goes out. If that's hard, we also can anchor in the points of contact between the body and the chair, or the feet and the floor, just anchoring in the pressure that the body's feeling held or feeling grounded. And if it's even hard to be in the body, we can anchor in the sounds in the room, or even the sound of my voice right now. If we're able to anchor in some present moment experience, we open again to what's present here now, just with an intention of allowing it to be there, of accepting that if there's unpleasant that's here, and there's suffering that's arising, that this is suffering, and that it's here now. Can I just let it be here for a few moments? Understanding that everybody suffers. It's a common human experience. This might just be a moment for me. And turning towards the experience, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, with curiosity, staying curious about it, and bringing compassion to ourselves, or to the part of ourselves or the place in the body where we're most experiencing these sensations or the suffering, just with an intention of sending kindness, warmth to ourselves or to this part of ourselves that's holding this suffering. And it may be difficult to do that, and if it is, you also can put a hand on your heart, or you could hug yourself, or hold yourself at the elbows, or find some other form of soothing touch, even gentle rubbing of a hand or an arm or a cheek. Just like you might give warmth or calm to a child that you care about when they're suffering, or a friend. Just being able to let ourselves know that we're here and that we can hold this for this moment and be with this. Just for one moment longer. And then from wherever your attention has been focused, beginning to expand awareness out through the torso and back and chest, out, expanding awareness of the sensations in the arms, the lower arms, and the hands out to the fingertips. Expanding awareness down to the legs, knees, the lower legs out to the feet, the toes, allowing awareness to rise up the neck, up to the head, and even allowing awareness to go beyond the body to the sounds in the room, the sounds of my voice. And before we're done with the practice, just taking a moment to notice what gratitude feels like in the body. Taking a moment to feel gratitude that you showed up here today, that you have a mind that that is open to mindfulness, and that you have this practice that can help in moments of overwhelm or distress, or moments of autopilot behaviors. And also just taking a moment to have gratitude for everyone else here on this call. You're not alone. 16,000 people tuning in to this network who have good intentions and are coming together as a community to help try to take care of themselves and this world. It's maybe an opportunity to connect with the grounding value. There's a value in your life that is particularly grounding for you. And then from there, preparing to open fully to experiencing life's beauty and its challenges, and going forward for the rest of the day and onward into the future, orienting to each experience that arises, each being you come into contact with kindness. When you're ready, you can open your eyes and bring your awareness back to the screen and to our conversation here.
Zev, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I was with you and with my experience the whole time, and what I noticed was that it is really a paradox, isn't it? We want to shut away the experience because it is hard, or it's difficult, or it's challenging, and we're worried about what may come up. But actually, by turning to the experience, sitting with it, being with it, offering ourselves compassion and kindness, which again, as healthcare professionals, we're very good at offering compassion and kindness to others, somehow tend to have a personal blind spot when it comes to ourselves.
Yeah.
And for me, the whole way through, it was like giving myself a hug, which just feels so refreshing. Thank you so much for leading us through that.
My pleasure.
And if I may, Stop, Ache and Go actually is like an acronym, isn't it?
It's an acronym. So, and so each week in our mindfulness training for primary care program, or mindfulness training for living well, we are focusing and building one of the informal practice that supports one of the steps of the acronym. So stop. The S is to stop, or if you can't stop, slow down. Again, there's always a trauma-informed option within the practice for us to develop our skillfulness and to decide if we want to go through all the steps or just want to use a few of them. Over time, we develop our own skillfulness. It's not, it doesn't have to all happen in order, and it doesn't have to all happen all at once. But taking notice, turning towards experience, or taking notice of breathing if that's hard, observing this diamond of experience allows us to fully take an experience, noticing the feeling tone of the pleasantness, the P, the pleasantness, unpleasantness, or neutral experience. Feeling tone is pretty key to being able to decenter from experience, because that's where we often get most caught up, is that subtle either avoidance of negative, unpleasant experiences, or this approach and wanting and craving and holding on to pleasant experiences. The A is for allowing, accepting, acknowledging the ache is here, and if not, anchoring, and then trying to come back to accepting. And then C is for common humanity, curiosity, and compassion, self-compassion. H is for holding, holding ourselves. And E is for expanding. G is for gratitude and connecting with grounding values, which really helps people with making behavior change. If we can connect mindfully, become aware of what it is that we value and accept ourselves for what we actually value, those can become really helpful anchors for us in directions from which we go forth. And then opening and orienting with kindness. It's important to say that it's been a huge team that I work with at CMC that's been developing in a collaborative and iterative way this program. I feel like it's been a gift and an honor to be able to be part of such an amazing community and team, which with this are kind of originated out of. And so on our website, actually, you can find the Stop, Ache, and Go practice and the details there at chacmc.org.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I would love to ask you one more question. But before I do that, I want to share with the audience that we are going to open up to some Q&A. So if you are wanting to ask Dr. Schuman-Olivier a live question and you're prepared to come online and share your audio and video with us, then please do type into the Q&A function on the bottom of your screen. Type in the word live, L-I-V-E, so that we know that you're happy to come online. Type in who you are, where you're from, perhaps your role within healthcare, and then your question. And then you'll hear me in a few moments call out your name, and if we pick you, then please stand by. You'll see a pop-up on your screen, and please press yes, and we'll enable your audio and video to come online. I'm here in sunny London. It's not usually sunny, and we're getting some reflection on the screen. So apologies for that, but the reality is I'm kind of enjoying the sun in this moment. So here we are. Zev, I have one more question for you. Now, despite the challenges and the difficulties that the pandemic has presented, we've also seen countless acts of compassion, connection, and collaboration. And I am really aware that within the Center for Mindfulness and Compassion, connection and community is at the heart of the center and everything that you do. And so keeping that in mind, as we go forward, despite the difficulty, what glimmers of hope do you see coming out of this? And how might we use all of this, the whole experience, to create a more cohesive society or community within and outside of healthcare? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
So there's been an amazing outpouring of teamwork and generosity that has emerged, and of empathy and compassion that I see coming from various parts of our society and especially from our center. I didn't mention this, but we have a live online mindfulness program where we're offering 3 times a day free online mindfulness practices, as well as practices in Portuguese and Spanish several times a week. And this emerged actually through the desire from our group leaders and teachers throughout the center to come together as a community to begin to offer this. And through various members of our team, rapidly working to be able to pull this together. And I just think that it's been a beautiful process, and I'm so grateful to all of the teachers. I wish I could name all of them right now, but I know we don't have time. But you can go to the website and see. But they're really offering this from the bottom of their hearts and with open hearts. And it's been an amazing holding experience for each other and for people in the community, and it sounds like around the world. We have people joining from all around the world now. So I think that's kind of something that emerged, and we see this kind of generosity and courage emerging across the country and across the world. I would hope that there could be a way that that this open-heartedness could somehow kind of encompass the rest of the of global discourse and national discourse, to look beyond divisiveness and to recognize the common humanity. I think one of the things that's been hard is that because there's such disparities in what people are experiencing and the intensity of the experience, and it's so different in different regions, that the more that we can open ourselves to hear other people's experiences that are not ours, the more that we can make space to not avoid them, to not just get locked into our own narratives, but to really hear what everybody's experiencing. I hope that could lead to more connection, community, and compassion.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And where might the audience come to access these daily programs?
Oh, that would be www.chacmc.org
Okay.
/connect. If you go to the main CMC website, you can find it right there on the front page, or /connect. Yeah.
Thank you. And we'll put out that resource for everyone later on as well, when they get the recording for this
And
as well.
I see your comments, the question about Stop Bake and Go. Stop Bake and Go is also available in the resources section of our website. And we will be having group leader trainings for mindfulness training for primary care live online, as well as online groups in the coming months that people want to learn more about this specific way of cultivating mindfulness.
Thank you so much. And Zev, I have a question. Question from Ilana, who's an MD out in Virginia. Ilana, are you able to join us on live, I wonder? Live online. Let's see if she's going to come online. And if not, oh yeah, I see Ilana popping up. Welcome. So we'll just wait for her to connect.
Hi there. I've already forgotten what I said. But my questions were, when you were talking earlier, you mentioned something about extinction, and I missed what that was, but it sounded important. So I was looking for like a one-liner on that, and then the warm and cold compassion.
So there are different ways that behavioral learning happens. And one of the processes in the brain that we see is this exposure response prevention and reconsolidation, and which can lead also to extinction learning. So these are processes that are understood about how learning happens and about how memories are made, and that often drive motivated behavior. So that if we expose ourselves to something that's uncomfortable and we don't respond, and we do that enough, then ultimately we can see a reconsolidation of the memory without the link to the behavior, to the avoidance action. And I was specifically talking about cool and warm pathways to teaching mindfulness. And that this warm pathway, I think, really integrates and recognizes the importance of kindness to self, kindness to others, and the idea of practice existing within community as a way of helping to support people as they are developing mindfulness.
Okay.
Thanks. I actually, Rena, I had a poem I wanted to make sure that I got to read. It was from a patient, primary care patient in our program. So I just want to make sure I have time to do that.
Sure. Please do, Zev. And we're gonna, Lana, thank you for your message, by the way. We're going to wrap up because I'm aware that you've got another commitment to get off to. But please do share the poem and any sort of final words before we wrap up.
So I actually just heard this today prior to coming on and thought, this is really a beautiful poem that summed up a lot of what we're teaching. And this is from Juliana, who was in our Portuguese mindfulness training for primary care group with Marcelo Tronca and Sasha Oxnard as the group leaders. And she is an immigrant who works in a cleaning service, who wrote this on a notebook and took a picture of it and sent it to the group leader, who passed it along to me and translated it. So I'll read it in English.
Perfect.
It's called All Will Pass. Every day we face death. Death is part of life. What is the point of living many, many years without living conscious of each moment? Taking care of ourselves with love, having prevention behaviors, this is self-care, which is different from fear-based action. This is not helpful and does not bring health. Doesn't matter what it is, the situation we face. To keep connected with our inner peace, this is the best way to help ourselves and help the ones in need. Situations will pass, the body will pass, our lives will pass, and only consciousness and what we are on the inside will remain. I want to thank Juliana, who I don't know if she's listening or not. She may be working, but I felt like it was a wonderful distillation of the warm mindfulness path and what we've been trying to help people to find in our mindfulness training programs in primary care. And I'm so glad that she was able to have the opportunity to be able to participate in this program, to be able to have this awareness to support her and us during this time. And I do think this is the best way to help ourselves and help the ones in need.
Zev, thank you so much. And Juliana, wherever you are in the world, thank you for sharing that with us. And I've already seen some comments of people asking if we can share that poem. So Zev, I will leave that to you to get back to her, and we'll try and coordinate this. And what a beautiful reminder to really stay in touch with our inner consciousness as we navigate this time. Thank you so much. Zev, you have given us tools and techniques and practical ways of navigating with the stop, ache and go exercise. And actually what I'm taking away from this is sometimes in the moment, we might not have the luxury of time to go through a guided practice, but we could pick up pieces of that stop, ache and go practice to better navigate. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for sharing your own vulnerability and just showing up fully for all of us on this call. And of course, I know that you are navigating the COVID crisis in your part of the world, and I wish you all the best as you do that. And thank you for your service to humanity at this time, Zev.
Thank you for offering this opportunity to share what we've been doing and just to be able to bring us all together around mindfulness and kindness and compassion and creating community. So I appreciate what the Awake Network is doing, building community here.
Thank you. And yeah, if you guys want to learn more about the Cambridge Health Alliance and the Center for Mindfulness and Compassion, do check out their website, and they have these free daily online programs that you can tap into. And we've got Zev's bio below as well that we'll make accessible. And really, I want to just take a moment to appreciate all of you for showing up and for participating, and really forming this global network and global healthcare community to support each other and to sort of take some time to self-care. So thank you so much. We're going to be back next week on the 2nd of June with Dr. Kristen Neff. Many of you will be following Kristen Neff's work, will be aware of her. She's really a leader in self-compassion research, and I'm really looking forward to her sharing insights into her research and how it can help us better navigate this current time as well. So really looking forward to being with you throughout this series. We've got some great speakers coming up, and this recording will also be available to you and accessible to you to take away and to allow it to sink in. I think I'm going to definitely need some processing time to allow the practice to sink in. So thank you so much, and my sincerest care goes out to all of you wherever you are in the world. Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Thank you.